This is Success Stories, a program of the Sorrell College of Business that highlights the lives and careers of people who have accomplished great things. I'm Alan Mendenhall. I'm Associate Dean in the Sorrell College of Business and Executive Director of the Manuel H. Johnson Center for Political Economy. My guest today is Daphne Posadas. She is our youngest guest to date, and so it is particularly exciting to have her here. She works for the Foundation for Economics Education, but she's also a graduate student in our economics program at Troy University. Daphne, it is really great to have you on the show.
Well, the pleasure is mine, Alan. Thank you for inviting me and having me over here.
Well, we actually met, you may not recall this, but we met roughly a year ago at the Mont Pelerin Society meeting in Guatemala. You are from Guatemala City, and you are a student at the Universidad Francisco Marroquín, where the Mont Pelerin Society meeting was held. And I was fascinated by this talk you gave at the Mont Pelerin Society meeting. And it began with your story of being an 18-year-old and trying to figure out what you wanted to do with your life and career. And I want you to just sort of pick up where I just left off and to tell that story about how you ended up at the Universidad Francisco Marroquín.
Of course, Alan. Well, thank you for having me here. And of course, I remember Mont Pelerin meeting where we met, and it was kind of one of my biggest dreams to ever assist a Mont Pelerin Society meeting. But of course, I didn't know I was going to be actually a speaker there. And that was just like, you know, fulfilling little girls' dreams. And this is how the story goes. When I was 18 years old, I wanted to decide what I wanted to do with my life. You know, teenagers are usually faced with that decision that is so important of what you're going to study on your university, or if you actually want to study on your university. So for my pretty much like the last 5 years of my high school, I was choosing the path of becoming an engineer. And I thought I was going to be an engineer, and I liked science, I liked physics, I liked maths. So I thought this is what I'm going to do. But in my senior year of high school, I discovered Universidad Francisco Marroquín through a debate program, and I just pretty much fell in love with the politics program that they had there. And that's how I decided to actually pursue this career in politics and international affairs. But as you know, Universidad Francisco Marroquín is one of the most expensive universities in Guatemala. And when I told my parents I want to study there, they told me, I'm sorry, but we don't have that kind of budget. So my story begins as a girl who decides to pursue their passion for politics and international affairs, but also as an 18-year-old who is asking for someone to believe in her dreams. And I went with my parents and I told them, listen, I really, really need you to invest in my dreams. I really need you to pay for this first year of university, and I'm going to figure out a scholarship later. And good thing for me, my parents decided to invest in my dream, invest in my education, and I started studying at Universidad Francisco Marroquín, International Affairs and Political Sciences, and eventually I managed to get a scholarship that allowed me to continue my studies there. And it's been pretty amazing to be able to be the first student ever to get a scholarship in that program in the university, to actually know that there are many other students now who are receiving the same scholarship that allowed me to pursue my dreams. And it just kind of amazes me because the knowledge that I've gained through that education is something that I like to share with others as well. So that's kind of like the career path I chose allows me to also educate others in this path.
So the Universidad Francisco Marroquín, otherwise known as UFM, is a very unique and special place. Can you tell us a little bit about UFM, its character, its mission, what it does, why it's unique in Guatemala?
Well, I like to say that UFM is pretty much a Disneyland for people who believe in liberty, for people who not only believe in liberty, but also understand the value that liberty has in our society. So in the 70s, our founder decided that he wanted to pursue a project that would allow different generations in Guatemala to build a country based on these principles, the principles of free market, rule of law, everything that enables free and open societies. And that's how the university started, as a place where not only you are learning whatever you choose to study, whether that's medicine or law, but you're also understanding these other values, and you put them together and you create a professional that is enabling and creating a liberty environment within their society as they become professionals.
Yeah, there is a lot of reverence toward the founders of UFM. When you're on campus, people speak about the founders. And my understanding, and this may be an incorrect understanding, but my understanding is that the founders founded UFM because they had begun a reading and discussion group based around the question, why is Guatemala poor? They had gotten a conversation one day, why is Guatemala poor? And they tried to figure out the answer to that question. And so they started reading. They started reading philosophers. They started reading economists. They started reading in political theory. And it was through these conversations that they sort of developed a curriculum for themselves that they found to be very valuable. And they were very successful business people. And they thought, really, young people ought to be pursuing these questions with the same sense of urgency and seriousness as we are. And we could actually found an entire institution based around the conversations we've been having. And those conversations, in turn, led to the creation of UFM. And it's a magnificent story. And UFM is a fascinating place. As you know, I was just there a month ago, roughly, visiting there and speaking there and meeting with people there. And so it holds a special place in my heart. Now, you are currently working towards a master's in economics in Troy's program. How has your experience been so far?
Wonderful. Like you know, and like you said at the beginning, I am also a project manager and brand ambassador for FEE, which is the Foundation for Economic Education, and it has been in the United States for over 75 years. But recently, about 3 years ago, we launched the FEE en Español program, which aims to create and to bring all this compelling content about the importance of free markets and rule of law and freedom of speech and the culture of freedom, really, to all Latin American audiences or Spanish-speaking audiences. And as a brand ambassador for the organization, I need to know my economic topics, you know. And of course, I got a good base back home in my university because we usually go around these questions. But having the opportunity to become a professional in the arts, I wouldn't say science, but I would say arts of economics, it's been truly amazing. And so I've been learning about, you know, how the markets work. I've been learning my math econ, which has been great. But also I've been like really trying to identify which are the things that are most important to put out there for the rest of the young audiences to understand the importance of economics, because we're living in a time and place where if you don't know economics, you can have a really bad time. So, you know, it's been a pretty amazing experience, a pretty amazing opportunity, and just being here in the United States, learning these topics, and of course producing content that will allow me to bring these ideas to more people, it's just very an amazing opportunity overall.
Well, in the United States, economics is typically a department housed within a college of liberal arts or a college of business. But at UFM, economics has its own college, which is fascinating. Right. I know that's not the college that you went through. You went through a different one, but right. I still find that to be revealing of the emphasis that UFM has on the centrality and the importance of economic thought. Now, while you were a student at UFM, you began getting into television and radio, and you have actually developed a pretty significant persona in sort of popular television and media in UFM. How did you begin that process? How did you get into the media in Guatemala?
You know, we were talking about this on our way here, and it's kind of difficult to put into words, but I've identified the key element to become a personality or to become a spokesperson in Guatemalan social media and TV and radio was by being a student. By being a student of the world, not only a student of university, but by having genuine curiosity about what's going on in the world, what's going on in the country. So all this curiosity that I was having about how the world functioned, I would bring it to the classroom. And in that classroom, my teachers would notice, my professors would notice that I was invested in understanding how everything went. And they invited me to their two different opportunities. I started going to radio in my first year of university, but I landed my first job as a radio host when I was in my second year of university, and I became a co-host for a radio show that does political analysis for youth on Friday nights, and that's how I started my career as a radio host. And then eventually, because of my radio experience, I would get invited into very important political debate tables in Guatemala that would address public policy or different issues that were going on around in Guatemala. And this was while I was still in college, and I would go to the debates and I would go to these tables to discuss these ideas with people who were probably 20, 30 years older than me, which is kind of intimidating, but of course it was also a great opportunity to start introducing the ideas of freedom and the ideas that I was learning so freshly from university. So that's kind of how I started. Eventually I landed a job also in a foundation that produces a TV show. So I've been pretty close to the media, to radio, to now social media as well, but my idea is to bring all this curiosity that I have about the world, to bring all this knowledge that I get from my university experiences and put it out there, because it does nothing being here in my head, you know, it needs to be put out there.
So you had no professional training before you were thrown right in. Did you ever get professional training, or did you just learn by doing?
I just learned by doing. And, you know, of course, like I said, it was an intimidating experience because I was sitting there with people who had been there many, many times. But the thing for me is that I really wanted to become a person who spoke on TV or someone who spoke on radio. So I decided that if I wanted to become that person, I needed to be that person as well. So I kind of self-taught me. Of course, I received some tips from people and from friends and colleagues who have joined me in this path, but it was pretty much everything self-taught.
To be an influencer in Guatemala involves no small degree of potential danger, right? You are revealing where you are in particular locations and circumstances. How do you manage that? We've talked a little bit about off this show about social media and how much to be on it and how much to be off it, how to be responsible with it, how do you become an influencer but still maintain, you know, a private life. Talk a little bit about maybe some of the dangers or limitations or difficulties that you have as someone who is a social media influencer.
Right. Well, you know, the typical fears that you would have in regular life, in real life, would be the same that you would have in social media. Like, you would get scared if somebody was following you to your house or something like that. So you have to be really careful about where you are, about what you're posting. And we were talking about this, like you said, off the mics, and I was, you know, like, used to be very careful about what type of content I am putting out there. So I always make this difference, and I always make this separation between my life and between the content I produce. So it's one thing what I am doing with my life, my personal business, my security, you know, my whole routine. That's something I probably will not be sharing on social media, but I will be sharing things that I have an opinion on. So I will share news about what's going on in Nicaragua. I will share news about what's going on in Brazil. I will share news about a public policy that the government is trying to put out there. So you know, kind of making that separation on the one hand. But another thing that I think it's very important to remember is that in countries like ours, in Latin America, we have less freedom of speech as you would have in other countries. So if you say something against the government, it can be very detrimental for you and for your professional future, because people will not invite you to collaborate if you're criticizing the government too harshly. So, you know, kind of like dancing in those lines, being faithful and being true to yourself and to what you believe in, but also being careful about not being too uncomfortable to certain people so that your security is not put at risk. In Guatemala and in many places in Latin America, there are people who actually get prosecuted for their opinions. So I'm not going to say it's something that's always happening, but I am going to say that this is something that could happen. So you have to be, you know, kind of like responsible about what you're putting out there in social media, not only for security reasons with, people who might do harm to you, but also because of the government. They're watching.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking if you are in a public place and you are a public figure, let's say you're at a Starbucks and there's only one Starbucks in the area and you snap a selfie saying, my cappuccino here at Starbucks sure is great. Well, you've revealed your location because everyone knows that your sort of zone of activity is here. That's the only Starbucks in the area. I know where Daphne Posadas is at this very moment.
Right.
And you could have, political opponents or worse, finding out where you are. And so there are inherent risks in those types of posts.
Best case scenario, it's a fan and they ask you for a picture. Worst case scenario, it's someone who wants to do harm to you. So I remember very particularly moment. I did radio for 5 years, and we have political elections every 4 years in my country. So I covered once, and I covered the 2019 elections, general elections. And I remember that my co-host, and I would post a lot of pictures of us being in the radio, recording the program when we arrived and everything. And then somebody told us that there was this person who we had interviewed probably 3 weeks before, who was following us, who knew where we were, because he obviously didn't feel comfortable about the questions that we asked in the interview, so he would follow us, and he knew everything we did on Fridays because we went, on a regular basis to the radio show.
How did you fall in love with the concept of human liberty, the importance of freedom to human flourishing, and the absence of coercion in society as being fundamental to human prosperity? Where did this love come from?
Right. So again, back to my love for politics, it was because I was all the time in my high school debating about issues that were very important for society, such as poverty, such as justice. And these debates, made me question the reality, or made me question about the concepts that we usually use about liberty, freedom, justice, equality, etc., etc. So when I started, doing my research, understanding better, reading more books, and being able to have a wider scope of what's going on with these concepts in real life, I understood one thing, and that is the thing that's probably most important for me right now, and it's about the importance of politics, yes, but also the importance of individual character in order to create that political environment that will create a free society. So a lot of the time we are discussing these issues. We are talking about justice, we're talking about freedom, we're talking about corruption, we're talking about transparency, we're talking about these things that we want our political reality to be, but we never ask the question of what enables that political reality. And usually that answer comes from individual liberty, individual character, how an individual addresses the problems that they have on a day-to-day basis. Are they living or are they surviving? So asking those questions and creating my own personal character allowed me to understand that one of the most important things that we have to do in order to go and pursue liberty on a wider level is to pursue liberty on an individual level, on an individual manner, and to create your own character in order to be able to face the problems that the society will present to you with. So there's this great quote that I forget who it is from, but it's always like, it goes like, you cannot tell people how to rule everyone else if you don't rule yourself first. And that's kind of like the philosophy that allows me to create my own personal reality and then to be able to be coherent with this reality that I'm creating for myself and to the things that I would like society to be or to become, which is a freer society, a more responsible society, because with freedom comes responsibility, but of course a place where everyone gets to be their best version of themselves. And sadly, that's not a question that everybody's willing to ask. They're very invested in politics, but very not interested in their own personal characters.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because if you are going to advocate human liberty, you would want to live in a society in which people were virtuous and good, and crime rates were low, and people behaved well toward their neighbors and treated each other with respect. So liberty isn't the freedom to do whatever you want to other people.
Right.
You would want to live in a society in which every person sought self-improvement and sought to be the best person he or she could be in order to contribute to the sum of human relationships and to be constructive, a constructive member of society. So that makes perfect sense that each person would want to cultivate his or her best self in order to maximize the value of human liberty. So that makes perfect sense to me. I really like that way of thinking. When you first started our program, which was not very long ago, you had to take some classes that you hadn't taken in a long time, classes like calculus and stuff like that. That must have been a challenge and an adjustment to jump back in after years away from school and doing television and radio and having to jump back into studying. I wonder what that experience has been like.
Well, it's been intense. I'm not gonna lie, it's been intense, but I've always liked maths and physics. When I was in high school, I used to be in the Olympics program for maths and physics, so I was always very into numbers. And of course, when I decided to pursue a career in politics and international affairs, I forgot completely about that. I would only read a lot of books and understand those books, of course, and theories, but I didn't know maths or anything related with numbers for 4 years, which lasted my career. And also after I graduated, I started working and I forgot about studying. So coming back to university has been a challenge because I have had to remember about my passion for numbers and have had to balance that passion with a lot of other things that I'm doing right now. But it's been amazing. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I always say that good things take time, good things take a lot of effort, and I've been enjoying myself. I've been enjoying myself pretty much because I'm clear on how this is going to benefit for me, for my career, for my future, for the people who are learning through me, because like I said, as a brand ambassador for FEE, I am usually creating content for other people to learn about these ideas who probably don't have the chance to go to a university to learn about them. So to me, it's really important to be able to understand these ideas deeply in order to create that content for other people. So it's been quite a challenge. It's been quite a ride.
Well, that's exciting. I want to end with two questions, one short question and then one longer question, or one question that requires a longer response, which I would like you to give in Spanish. But the shorter question is, who were some of your favorite faculty from UFM? Who were some of your favorite professors, and what courses did you enjoy the most while you were there?
Okay, so I am definitely going to have to say Javier Fernandez Lasqueti. He was the dean of the faculty that I was in, which is the International Affairs and Political Studies. And I received one course that was called Grandes Libros. This is a program where you read the great books in history, or great books by great authors. And in that course, we read one of Mario Vargas Llosa's recent novels or recent books. It's called La Llamada de la Tribu, The Call of the Tribe. And in that book, he goes over different authors and thinkers from history that talk about the importance of liberty and how Mario Vargas Llosa's path was for him personally, understanding and reading these books. And Javier Lasqueti is an amazing individual, someone that I've learned so much from. But in that course, he brought Mario Vargas Llosa to us, to the class. So I was actually in a class with a Nobel Prize winner, being able to discuss with him what he wrote on his book. So that's definitely gonna go in the books. And then, of course, I have to say Eduardo Fernandez, who is also a Spanish professor, and he has been at UFM for a very long time. He gave me all my basic classes for political sciences, and he works now very closely with UFM and UFM in Madrid. So he taught me pretty much the basics of politics, and of course the importance of developing a moral character. And I could mention a lot of names. I feel bad not mentioning a bunch of my professors, but I had a lot of professors who allowed me to grow professionally, academically, such as Jesus Maria Alvarado, of course, Lenore Ely, and a lot of professors who allow me to be here today with sharing their own knowledge.
Well, the final question, which I would like you to answer in Spanish, is why is human liberty important? Why is there value in studying human liberty? And what does human liberty mean to you? Is there a moral or ethical element to human liberty?
So this is in Spanish,
This
right?
will be in Spanish.
This is Spanish, so
There
get
will
ready.
be no subtitles
No
either.
subtitles. No, but creo que la importancia de la libertad individual está en poder construir nuestro propio proyecto de vida. Y siempre le damos mucha importancia a los proyectos políticos, pero nos olvidamos de los proyectos individuales. Y el proyecto más importante que tenemos no es el proyecto político, sino el proyecto individual. In English, short. The most important project that we have in life is not a political project, but a personal project. So that's the importance of individual freedom, to free yourself from everything that will dictate you and how you have to live your life, and choose your own path, and from there create a political reality.
Well, muchas gracias, Daphne Posadas. Thank you very much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure, and I hope we can do it again before you leave Alabama. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a production of Success Stories, a show that highlights the lives and careers of people who have accomplished great things. Thank you very much for watching.